Hey everyone, Keith McGinnis here with KCDC Designs. Wow, got a really cool one coming up. This is how it turned out with a really cool, aggressive, a little bit more aggressive with the rock edge, as you can see here. So let's just give you an idea of how I created that. And you can see how I overlapped that drop edge down on the bottom. And that was to make that rock edge a little bit more aggressive. That's the Kutzall shaping disc that I use to shape that. And then once I get that shaped the way I like it, then I take some bondo, as you can see there in the picture, the tools I use to do that, and that's how that rock edge is going to end up looking like. But I get the bondo on there, then I get that sanded down, and then we're ready to get started. So once I get the surface painted with Stone Coat's Undercoat black paint, and I let that dry for 4 hours, get that, at least 4 hours, and get that sanded down, then I'm going to fog those edges. And again, that's probably one of the most important things to make sure you do is get those edges fogged. Let's breeze over that really fast and I can show you. But as the epoxy flows over that edge, the epoxy is going to be really thin. So you want to make sure and fog those edges so you have color on there. This basically is everything that I used on this project. There's the undercoat paint, the colorants. I'll describe what those are. The spray paints used to fog. There's my notch to bondo spreader, and then of course we got part A, part B of Stone Coat Epoxy. All right, so we're using bronze by Just Resin, aluminum by Just Resin, Alumilite Brown Dye, Ebony luster, which is a beautiful black metallic color, and then pearl white. So this was a lot of fun because I was able to get the customer involved in this. A little bit reluctant he was, but I got him involved and he had a good time. So now what I'm doing is getting my base colors poured out. And so we first poured out the black metallic, and now we're pouring out some of the brown. And I'm going to be holding a lot of that back because I want to add that brown dye a little bit later. But I wanted to get some kind of some striated lines put in there. And that's what we're doing here is getting those colors poured out. So we've got the aluminum, the black, the brown, and then some of the bronze. And boy, do you have to be careful with that bronze because it can really take over. That's why I always want to leave a little bit of color left over in my cups. So if one color takes over a little bit more than the other, then I've got some left over that I can add in there. So now what I'm doing is just melding this in, and really all I'm doing is just trying to get the dry spots covered on the board. So I'm going to do that half. We'll get Roger in there and we'll get him involved, and he's doing the same thing. We're just getting the basically getting the surface covered with epoxy. And then once we get those colors out, that will kind of create the base. Once we get that base created and get the surface entirely covered, then we'll be able to kind of stand back, take a look at it, and see if there's anything that we want to change or any additional colors we need to add. Now I'm going to take our very expensive tool, which is our notch bondo spreader, and wait for Roger to say, "What in the world are you doing?
What in the world?
It looks so good.
Are we doing?"
The reason I use the notch to bondo spreader is it creates lines which almost looks like layers, like what you would see in natural stone. Those lines are really going to fade as some time goes on, but it still kind of gives a layered effect. It's really cool. Now, what's really interesting with this is looking at it now, and it's right about, what, 7:30 on the nose, and then what that's going to look like in about 10 minutes. Now it's time to get all those air bubbles torched out, because I love this Alumilite Brown Dye. All right, are you seeing any areas that look too white, too dark, too black, too brown or anything? Or are they kind of separated fairly well?
Oh, I don't know. This is a little dark. Well, I don't know.
A little bit too dark? No, you throw that at me. A little bit too dark right in there?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. And if we take that and...
Yeah, brown's a nice color.
It is, oh my gosh, it's gorgeous. It is so pretty.
I mean, like, that's real dark right there, but that looks really good.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna put some more.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, see? Great lines, right?
Yeah.
And then take your hand like I did and just very lightly skim over it and just kind of let it fade as you get towards the end. and then what you have on your hand, just so we don't get it looking too uniform. You kind of spread that out a little bit and let that fade out. So once again, and I've said this a lot, how you really want to stand back and kind of take a look at what everything looks like. But I got Roger involved here too, and I apologize I don't have some close-ups yet until we do a flyover of how much that brown really makes a difference. So we're just kind of taking a look at some areas where, you know, it may need some highlights, or in this case where Roger thought that little area right there, how about if we get some more lighter color in there? And so that's what he did, is add a little bit more white. So that's why, another reason why I like to leave some colors left over, because as you kind of reassess what you're looking at, you're going to find some areas that may need a little more of this, may need a little more of that. And then when we get that brown dye put in there where we want it, what I'm doing now is I'm not only torching out the bubbles, but I want to heat that up just a little bit, because I'm going to end up tilting that piece. And what I want to try to do, you can see how those striations are moving. That really gives it more of an authentic look. Keep in mind, you're not always going to be able to tilt your project. So if you're creating a sample board for a customer and you're tilting it, but yet by the time you go to create the design on their countertop and you cannot tilt it, so just keep that in mind. And you'll see me torch just some areas. Those are the areas that when you torch it, it's going to make that epoxy more fluid, right? So those certain areas, I wanted to heat those areas up so only those areas would move. Once you practice with it, it can really add a lot to your design. What do you think?
That's nice.
Ready for some green?
Yep.
By the way, Roger's least favorite color is green. So we're not putting green in, we're adding Seaside.
Seaside blue, wasn't it, or something?
Yes. So even though Roger doesn't like green, his lady friend does. And so, but we were both convinced that that's not green, that is more of a turquoise. It's a Seaside, RustOleum Gloss Seaside. Accent colors can really enhance a design. And in this case, that Seaside really complements the bronze and the black, and really goes good. So find a color that you like, find a color that the customer likes, and you can add that in as accents. And I like to just put it in some places so it's not overwhelming, but just enough that it really looks like nature. I mean, it just looks like it belongs there. And then I always like to have that run down the rock edge. To me, it makes a really big difference. All right, so let's do a flyover. And I guess what I really want to point out here, obviously I cut this video down quite a bit, but what I want to point out is you watched how I created this. There's so many different techniques that can make a big difference on the result and how your piece is going to look. A couple things I want to point out is that notched bondo spreader. The lines were very defined, but now they're not. But if you look closely, you can kind of see how I gave that kind of layered look. And I apologize, but I didn't talk about spritzing it with alcohol, but I did spritz it with clear isopropyl alcohol, 91%. But also take a look at that right there in that front area, that Alumilite Brown Dye. It's such a pretty color. Areas where it kind of gets dark, gets light, how the colors ran over the rock edge. Although I probably spent somewhere between an hour, maybe an hour and 20 minutes that Roger and I spent on this, I really didn't do anything much more than what you saw me do. But learning the techniques as far as tilting, adding some accents in there, using the notched bondo spreader, spritzing with alcohol, just those little things can make a really big difference on how the overall piece is going to look. I know I've been talking a lot about that Alumilite Brown Dye, but I'm going to get a little bit of a close-up right in here, and that area kind of just above the pearl right in there. That Alumilite Brown Dye is absolutely gorgeous, and it gives you so many different hues of that brown. But anyway, this is actually a coffee table that Roger had bought for like $5 at an auction. He loved the legs, and the legs are really cool, but the top was awful, so I just built a new top for it. 49 inches by 29 inches. You can see there where I spritzed the alcohol, where it gave that little bit of just added effect. So once again, just taking your time. I mean, anybody can do this. It's just learning what the techniques are and then learning how epoxy is going to move. And you can come up with some absolutely amazing designs for a fraction of the cost of buying a piece of natural stone. And you put a rock edge like that on there, you're going to blow all of your friends' minds. I'm blown away by it. It's really cool. So I'm going to stop rambling, and I just wanted to say thank you all for watching. Please leave your comments. Don't forget to subscribe for upcoming tutorials. I'll do everything I can to try to explain what I do and how I do it to maybe help you and create maybe some shortcuts and some ideas on how to enhance a piece that you might be working on, or just little tips and tricks that could kind of take it to the next level. And that's really kind of the whole idea. But look at those colors and how they all flow together. And then again, there wasn't that many colors I added into it, but I'm just really happy with the way it turned out. So once again, thanks everybody. This is Keith McGinnis with KCDC Designs. I'm out of Eagle, Nebraska. Again, hit the subscribe button for upcoming tutorials, and I'm going to leave it at that. And thank you, and I will see you on the... Oh, you know what? Roger and Cheryl sent me a picture of once they got the coffee table assembled and what it looks like. They decided not to put the ultimate top coat on it, knowing that they can further on down the road. But here's how the coffee table ended up looking. And I'm telling you, it's quite a change from what it was before, but really looks sharp, and it was a lot of fun. Had a lot of fun working with the customer on doing this. So thanks everybody, and we will see you on the next video.